The summer of 2006 was a wild one, and Raw was basically the Wild West. Following WrestleMania 22, the WWE started leading into what made the Attitude Era so memorable. A lot of stories and moments that were strange and sad, and it coincided with WWE's most successful time period from a rating standpoint in about 5 years. The move to USA really helped them increase their reach and in turn increase the viewers. Raw had this almost unpredictable feeling to the point where I consider this summer of 2006 a mini version of the Attitude Era. The return of ECW, Edge constantly teasing a sequel to the live sexy celebration, DX reforming, and those summer contests with the Divas, John Cena being pissed off and unhinged, insanity all around. Of course it didn't always hit, but they were trying a lot of different stuff at the same time. Vengeance 2006 saw a lot of these stories come to a head. Cena's frustrations with ECW, Edge's pursuit of championship gold, and of course the McMahons trying to spoil DX's return. Okay, let's get into it. Vengeance 2006 was held in the Bobcats Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina on June 25, 2006. 6,800 were in attendance to witness the homecoming of the Nature Boy, and the buy rate was 320,000, which was noticeably lower than 2005's, which had the Hell in a Cell as the main event and the rematch between Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. WWE were heavily promoting the return of DX, and the success of the pay-per-view hinged on them. Right after WrestleMania, there was constant promotions of Vengeance being the return of DX, and this was before Triple H even turned face and went against the McMahons. It was the worst kept secret in the industry. The theme song for the event was Victim by 18 Visions, and it was used for Cena and Sabu's match later on. Alright, the first match in the show was between Randy Orton and Kurt Angle and a rematch from ECW One Night Stand. At Angle's departure from SmackDown to the ECW brand, he had indirectly made himself a target to just about every member of the WWE roster. Angle's no-nonsense, aggressive style was a strong match and a throwback to the classic ECW, and Paul Heyman was hell-bent on making him reach his full potential once again. Randy Orton, though, had a score to settle in light of his ankle being broken. In reality, he was caught with weed and was suspended for 2 months, and he failed to beat Angle at One Night Stand upon his return, but wasn't going to refuse a second chance. Throughout all of this, he moved to the Raw brand. Angle just debuted his remix to the Metal song, and as good as this version of Angle was, moving him to the ECW really limited him. His star power was basically cut a bit. It was the worst time in his career. He was depressed, he was taking pills, perk Angle as they called him. It just wasn't a good time. Alright, early on, Angle was very intense and very interested in getting to the mat game. The Olympic hero was making things awkward for Orton, was on the verge of locking the ankle lock, and even had him in position for a German suplex off the apron, but Orton, with all his life, was holding on. Sharp elbows put a stop, and it wouldn't matter because Kurt Angle ended up dropping him on the outside. ECW chants intensified, and this was enough for Angle to start taking control. Orton's mat game was absolutely horrific. It was entirely one-sided at this point, and he had to resort to a thumb to the eye and a dropkick. They made their way to the outside where Orton tossed Angle into the barricade and started going to work, trying to beat the living hell out of Angle. His offense was finally starting to work, but at a moment's notice, Angle connects with the Samoan drop. Reverse elbow from Orton puts a stop to this, and the Legend Killer starts wearing him down, all while he's bending the rules. Knee drop gives him a near fall, and instead of wasting time, he's going for the headlock. Once he realizes this wasn't going to work, he connects with a clothesline and decides to go up top. Legend Killer Orton never did well up top, and that's what happened here as Angle hit the belly-to-belly suplex for the top rope, and this was basically the beginning of Act 3. Angle starts his comeback, he's going, but once again, Orton counters the Angle slam and hits the backbreaker for a near fall. Orton's lining him up for the RKO, and after that doesn't go well, he loosens a turnbuckle leading to the German suplexes. 6 suplexes in a row, and he was exhausted but managed to connect with the 7th. It was getting tough for the Legend Killer. Angle was still hungry for more, and he finally locked in the ankle lock on that surgically repaired ankle. Orton was writhing in pain, desperate to get a fingertip onto the bottom rope, but he didn't. Instead, he pulled Angle into the exposed turnbuckle and boom! RKO. 1, 2, 3. Good match. What hurts it though is the talent involved, because as good as Angle was here, it wasn't hitting the same because of his issue. If this match happened on a pay-per-view earlier that year, it would have been even better, but here, ECW One Night Stand wasn't to be topped. It was simple action, nothing noteworthy, and at times it felt like a TV match. But that's what you're gonna expect from Kurt Angle from here on, because his main focus wasn't really wrestling. He had his issues outside of the ring. This was actually his final WWE pay-per-view appearance for about 11 years, which is insane. Backstage, Mr. McMahon gets a visitor. A kid in a DX shirt. He's all casual, but then it morphed into a rant from McMahon about DX's antics and thought the kid was involved with DX. So he pushed him out of there and straight to hell, and it turns out the kid was a guest of the coaches, so McMahon basically beat up a kid. The next match was between Umaga and Eugene. The Road to WrestleMania 22 saw the debut of Umaga. Umaga was a strong combination of intensity, agility, and a bit unpredictable. He was going through a lot of jobbers at this point and was slowly working his way up. Armando Alejandro Estrada hyped up Umaga out, and out came Eugene with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Doink the Clown, and Kamala. USA chants intensified because it's America, and Umaga was all pissed off because of this and started throwing him around. Eugene had some offense, but Umaga's stats were far too powerful. The corner move, cigar break, and the Samoan spike, it's academic. The rest of the men get involved, and the only one that didn't take a beating was Kamala, as Armando was like, hey, till another time. This was not really a match. This was a match, of course, but it wasn't really something to watch out for. It was just a way of showcasing Umaga and giving him some pay-per-view experience and building him up for the summer, because he was going to feud with Kane and then eventually John Cena and DX. In the back, Mick Foley said that he wanted to read a part of Ric Flair's novel. Yeah, he called it that because in his eyes, it was fictional, and read the part where Flair belittled Foley's legend status as a brawler. The glorified stuntman quote was of course mentioned, and he promised to wipe the ring with wrestling moves and claimed he's going to out-wrestle him. The next match is a 2 out of 3 falls match between Mick Foley and Ric Flair, a feud that's had real roots. Flair didn't appreciate how Mick Foley achieved a high status, as it all stems from jumping off stuff, and in his eyes, he's a glorified stuntman. They fought backstage once, and after things cooled over 16 months later, they had the feud. Flair was in his hometown, and facing Ric Flair and Charlotte is like going to Lambeau Field or something. Foley sucks chant intensifies, and the hardcore legend showed his ring prowess. It was clear that switching tactics for this match was going to harm him, but he was going all in with it. He showed off some of his brawling to get out of a tight situation and connected with a knee in the corner. Double arm DDT and all of that talk about having a wrestling match was thrown out the window as he brought out Mr. Sabu. It was basically a brawl for Mick Foley. Flair finally retaliated. He was going too hard, much to the enjoyment of Mick Foley, who took advantage of the situation. He walks into the inside cradle though, and Flair wins the first fall. He almost suffered the same fate in the second. Whatever Mick Foley was doing at this point, it would flip on its head. He adapted though and dropped him on the floor. Foley at this point decided screw and brought out the weapons. Figure 4 leg locks locked in, and he's trying to escape. He's doing anything at this point, so he blasted Flair with a trash can to give the Nature Boy the victory. Now, Flair would use sneezing as an excuse to bleed, but this was valid, because Foley brought out the barbed wire and used it as a weapon. His idea was to lure Flair in and use this match as a way to brutalize Ric Flair and make an embarrassment out of him in his hometown, and it got the fans worried. It gave Foley some additional heat, but about the match itself, it was very dry. I don't remember much from it, despite literally writing about it here, as the match just ended like that. All I remember is the first fall ending, the trash can moment, and that's it. It won't stand out a week later after you watched it. It just won't. These guys were older. Flair wasn't going to match well with Mick Foley, especially in this type of match, a match that wasn't no disqualification. It was just a way of advancing the feud, because their match at SummerSlam was even better. In the back, Maria interviewed Carlito and went on a deep conversation about people that are cool. Will Smith's son would be confused by all of this, and that's saying something. Carlito, though, was like, where the hell is this woman's head at? Then Tori Wilson pops up talking about baby oil and asked Carlito to hold her puppies, and without hesitation, he accepted. This was his moment. He's all happy, he's all excited, but then it was an underwhelming result, as she wasn't talking about what he thought she was talking about. That said, his eyes were comfortable in the end. But this had to end at the worst time. Why? Well, the next match was for the Intercontinental Championship. Carlito and Johnny Nitro challenged Shelton Benjamin for the gold. After being exiled from SmackDown, Melina and Nitro made their way to Raw. In Nitro's case, he was finally going to become a single star, as WWE saw enough in him to go for the push. Carlito had just turned face and things were looking optimistic. Shelton Benjamin knew how to wrestle, was an extraordinary athlete, but all he had at this point was the shirt. That's it. Very quick action early on with Benjamin trying to take advantage and leave. Nitro was cool to watch in the action, but the moment he entered, he got backdropped. Springboard, nothing, and Shelton drops Carlito with a boot. Catapult to the outside, and Carlito was about to go for something when Melina makes a save, and the champion was very strong here. He had to be distracted just in time for Carlito to hit a nice ass plancha off the ropes. It was absolutely stunning. It was magnificent. What made it so good was the hang time. It felt like he was floating in the air before descending upon those two. It was amazing. Back of the ring, Carlito takes a Russian leg sweep, and Melina starts doing those screams. Carlito rebounds with a beautiful Hurricanrana, and Benjamin decides to reintroduce himself. Shelton T-bones Nitro right out of there and goes to work. He's quickly thrown by Nitro, who ends up coming back in and ends up accomplishing nothing. Melina was making the saves. Nice victory roll from Carlito, almost gives him the victory. Beautiful spot leads to a dropkick from Carlito, but the best was yet to come. Nitro and Carlito are up at the top. They're striking each other, but when Benjamin hops up there without zero hesitation, and they hit this amazing spot. This spot wasn't overdone, so the crowd was stunned, and the impact was ridiculous. Nitro was the victor of this one, but as always, did nothing with it. Instead, Carlito started a comeback, and at this point, Nitro and Benjamin started working together to no avail. Carlito separates them and takes an enziguri for a near fall. These two are showing a lot of athleticism when Carlito all of a sudden hits the backcracker, and he has the match won. Johnny Nitro pulls him out and goes to the pin. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Okay, I'm just gonna say this was a pretty good match. The most exciting by far up to this point. There's a lot to talk about with it. These three had a lot of hunger inside and wanted to desperately steal the show. They wanted to remind these people that we're that damn good. Benjamin had a ridiculous level of athleticism. Nitro was sneaky, and Carlito all around was exciting. He was the man of the match, and every memorable spot from this match involved him. He's hopping out the ropes, doing it in style, and the fans loved him. For Benjamin, he was slowly slipping away. That push he received in 2004 was now in the past, and after this, he was basically a lower mid-carder until the end of 2007. The suplex powerbomb spot really stands out here because it wasn't often you'd see that in WWE, and the fans reacted to it with a sense of shock. It was one of the first times they ever did it, and man, these were three of the greatest mid-carders of that era. In the back, the spear Squad were getting all hyped up when the boss came in. He started going off about DX and called him a disease and the Spear Squad the cure. Pistol Pump, that damn DX as he calls him, got one over the boss again. The next match is for the WWE Championship. Rob Van Dam defended the gold against Edge. RVD's rise in 2006 was very cathartic, and it almost couldn't have happened to a better person. It was, no pun intended, extremely satisfying. Not for 2006 me, of course, but in general. Edge provided a much needed assist, and Van Dam's dream of championship glory was achieved. This all turned out to be an elaborate scheme from Edge, who just wanted to screw over John Cena, and in turn, take advantage of RVD, who's all excited about the title victory. This leads to the match at Vengeance. The Rated R Superstar had a high level of confidence and said the WWE title being in ECW is as ridiculous as North Carolina having a Stanley Cup. He credited Canada for both of these things and promised to win back the belt and have a sequel to one of their live sex celebrations. Just like the fans do with their sisters. Aw, man. I don't need to say it, but that title suited RVD. So the bell rings, side headlock from Edge, his ego is on display here, and with context, it's almost strange that this match was happening for the world title. These two were just stuck in the mid-card for a while. Feeling out process, Edge of course takes the shortcut and evades the monkey flip and was a little too confident. RVD had more tricks than joints in his pot. That didn't sound good. Edge was trying to compete in the athletic game with the worst person. Beautiful windmill kick, and Edge doesn't want none. Van Dam was giving him a tough time inside and outside the ring, and whenever somebody says RVD is a human highlight reel, they're not lying. Lita gets involved, leading to the Rated R Superstar finding his opening with a sunset flip. This allowed for Edge to slow down the pace. Van Dam had fight, but he wasn't able to make it work here. The challenger started wearing him down, but one mistiming allowed for the champion to connect with a crossbody to the outside. The spinning leg drop wasn't to be, and Van Dam's selling was on display. He was still holding on despite being in a tough position, and without any worry, Edge tossed him to the outside. And to top it all off, he powerbombed him onto the barricade. Huge trouble for the champion. Every spot was getting worse for him, and Edge was absolutely unrelenting. His game plan was altered. It was all about making that back worse. RVD was battered. He was trying to put something together, but was far too hurt. Springboard missile kick, and he finds a way. Abrasive clotheslines, back body drop, and a beautiful German suplex that almost gives him the victory. The Rolling Thunder, though, is countered into a power slam. This doesn't stop RVD's momentum, though. He was even in position to hit the frog splash. Since Edge moved, he connected with the Rolling Thunder despite hurting, and even hit the split-legged moonsault. It was beautiful. But then the ref got knocked down, and Edge found an opportunity. This didn't work into his favor at all, and Van Dam connected with a Van Daminator before Lita interfered and gave Edge a moment of relief. Stunning DDT gives Edge a near fall, and he's in disbelief. Lita brings in a chair, and it hurts nobody but Edge, leading to the 5-star frog splash. 1, 2, 3. That was a pretty strong match. RVD put in a great performance fighting as the brave champion who, despite his shortcomings, was able to fight through. He sold the back well here. Even when he was on the offense, he'd make sure to look like he's hurting. It was the best match up to this point because both men matched well. Edge was a good heel here. He was throwing everything at RVD and fighting through it, made the champion look well. They told a great story with RVD struggling to find a proper opening to combat the Rated R Superstar after the sunset flip. It was getting worse after every spot for him, whether it's the leg or the back. You felt like RVD was all bruised and roughened up, yet he managed to win in the end. It really did a lot for Rob Van Dam's title reign to have him beat Edge clean, and the way he did it here. It was amazing. He beat a top tier main eventer, and it really should have continued. I kind of wish his title reign continued even beyond Saturday night's main event, because I think it would have been nice to see RVD face a multitude of talent other than Kurt Angle, Edge, and John Cena as he did during this title reign. He probably would have had a great match against somebody like Randy Orton. He had a great performance here and added a bit of legitimacy to his title reign, which unfortunately fell off the following week because of the whole drug busting. Paul Heyman hyped up the ECW roster about the Lumberjack match. They're all hyped. He's talking about, oh, the Lumberjacks, you guys are here. You're going to be extreme. They're like, ECW, and that's the segment. The next match was between Kane and Kane. A story of mystery. Kane's past was coming back to haunt him, and he wasn't having it. The Imposter was claimed to have something to do with Kane, but there wasn't much about it that the audience knew about, nor did the commentary know about. Kane immediately goes on the attack with a flurry of punches. The Imposter is phased for only a second and hits the clothesline on the outside. Shoulder block by Kane, and he's about to unmask him but fails. After the ref distracts him, he receives a sidewalk slam, and the Imposter starts going to work. He made Kane look like the underdog. There was fight, but he just wasn't able to do something about it, and the commentary was flabbergasted by the lack of offense from him. He started to display that anger and hit the DDT power slam, and Kane is delivering the strikes in the corner. JR felt that Kane was overcoming the intimidation. Choke slam is blocked, and the Imposter finally puts a stop to the big red machine for all of 2 seconds because Kane slammed him off the top rope, and it was time for him to go up top. The Imposter catches him and hits the choke slam. 1, 2, 3. That was a dull ending. It felt like they missed the tombstone, but I'm not in there wrestling. It was probably how it was supposed to go. But yeah, Kane looked kind of weak, taking that choke slam and losing. The match actually caught me kind of off guard. I remember it being absolute trash, a dull affair, and at times it was dull. I'm not going to lie to you. But I thought it was a bit better than that. Still one of the weakest matches on the show, and looking back, Kane's character is probably one of the best written of all time, but he was in some rough storylines, and this one was very disappointing. It really should have been one of the weird stories that stand out, and it did stand out, but not for the good reasons. Like, I'm not the one writing it, I'm not going to tell them how to do it, but they should do better than that by having this storyline go the way it did. The next match was an Extreme Lumberjack match. John Cena faced Sabu. As a kid, I never realized how strange this match was. Sabu is one of the furthest things you can get from the marketable, clean image that WWE has, yet not only was he in the company, but he was facing the #1 guy. Cena's problems with the ECW brand stemmed from the way his match with Rob Van Dam turned out. His attitude was significantly changed and he was almost unhinged. This version of Cena was pretty fresh because he was sporting a black eye and had a lot of fury behind him. It stands out because he wasn't really doing anything out there for the past year. He was going after the ECW brand, and after Sabu dropped him through the announce table and left him a scarred and bloody mess, found some enjoyment in receiving some of that ECW extreme style, to the point where with a black eye visited the locker room with two things: his balls and his word, and despite their animosity, the men found some respect in this encounter. The Lumberjacks are of course their lower card talent. Sabu with a cheap shot to gain the advantage. He quickly sends him to the outside where nothing goes down. Fisherman suplex for a near fall, and it's Sabu's turn. Cena's getting mauled on the outside, and Sandman even dropped him with a kendo stick. Sabu at this point was doing whatever he saw fit. Triple jump moonsault, the low blow, and a springboard leg drop. Even the Arabian face buster, which seemed to harm him as well. He went to the well one too many times, and Cena avoided it. Cena chants intensify, and he starts his comeback. Body slam, strikes, and a brawl ensues on the outside. Cena had enough of this and FU'd Stevie Richards into the crowd, and Sabu takes advantage with the chair, and he was destroying Cena. It was wild. The ECW guys were doing it their way, but the Raw guys finally made the save, and Cena grabs the kendo stick before FUing Sabu through the table. Viscera and Stitsky grab him, and he's locked in the STFU. Sabu taps, and Cena's victorious. This match is pretty fun. It's a shame that it lasted for 6 minutes because there could have been more done. Cena and Sabu was a great matchup. They had two different styles, but it worked so well. Like Cena usually has all the time. Out of all the matches, he wrestles for only 6 minutes here, when it's actually good. It had to be this one that they made 6 minutes. Sabu tapping is kind of funny, because you guys know how he was in ECW. This guy would die before he taps out, and he also took a rough FU through the table. But despite this fun match, it was quick, fast-paced. The Lumberjacks did their jobs well, and it's almost unfortunate that they never had more time, because I know for a fact that these two would have stole the show if they had 5 more minutes to go in there and have this match. It's unfortunate, it's a shame. In the back, RVD felt like giving Cena a title shot. He had a lot of respect for him walking to the ECW locker room, and Van Dam acknowledged that Cena might be slated for never receiving his title shot, but tomorrow, they're having the match. It's kind of unfortunate that they never had a rematch on pay-per-view, because as good as their Raw match was the next night, it was ruined by the ending, not to mention the lack of time as always on TV. And the main event, the Spear Squad faced the returning D-Generation X, a story that stems from December of the previous year. HBK had made an enemy out of Mr. McMahon just for telling him to move on from Montreal, and what followed was 5 months of agony for the Heartbreak Kid. Triple H was brought in as an agent of destruction to take out Michaels, but his words seemed to have affected the game, and he got himself into a huge problem with the boss. And out of everyone to save him, it was Shawn Michaels, and thus the reunion of D-Generation X began. Was the reunion of DX long overdue? Not really. These guys went their separate ways and became rivals. It's just the teases at WrestleMania started a snowball effect for the fans to be like, yes, we want DX back. And the hype was ridiculous. It felt like the fans were waiting non-stop for 8 years, which they weren't, because these guys went their separate ways. They had their own feuds. They were doing a lot of good stuff. There wasn't really a craving for it beforehand. This DX was more ironic because back then they were going against the establishment and doing it with comedy. Here they were older, and instead of making jokes, they were the joke. Yeah, DX had some fun and banter here with some promos, but from the outside, the 40-year-old men were the joke. The Spear Squad as individuals are like the My Player in 2K. He's 60 overall. In the beginning, Michaels was having a little too much fun with Mitch. He shows more aggression than HBK and actually caught him off guard. He screwed himself over though by wasting too much time, and HBK's chops were vicious. DX cleared the ring of the Spear Squad and Johnny was busted open. Teamwork only got Johnny a strike to the nose, so all that karate training was for nothing. And Triple H showed no mercy. This man was beaten, humbled, and demoralized, and once he countered, he decided to make a run for it. These guys didn't know what they were up against, and this was a toned-down DX. They weren't taking them seriously. Nikki with a kick, and the Spear Squad finally made use of their numbers advantage. Michaels alone was making a joke out of them, but they realized, hey, this is all we have, so let's continue doing that, and Johnny's kick dazed the Heartbreak Kid. Nikki enters, and it's the same old story. Then Kenny dropped HBK with a swift chair shot. It was ridiculous. The sound, the velocity, yeah, it was crazy. Then Mikey uses a trampoline to his advantage to hit a bulldog. This was the advantage the Spear Squad desperately hoped for, to isolate Shawn Michaels away from Triple H and use their fresh energy to enter the match and in turn possibly win the entire thing. The athleticism was on display. Sure, they made mistakes, but they were able to cover their tracks until Michaels hit the double DDT, and the 60 overall was really showing here. These guys were weak as hell, and Triple H's, and this was the beginning of the end. High knee drops Mikey, a spine buster drops Kenny, and they were trying their hardest to take him down. Michaels on the outside avoids a splash from Mikey, and inside Kenny's begging. They don't listen, and Triple H drops him with the pedigree. Michael super kicks Nikki for the win. He ended up making Mitch kiss the game's ass, and McMahon looked on almost proud. He congratulated them on their victory and said he'll see them tomorrow. Okay. Decent match. It was very TV-esque, though. The match never really reached an exciting point barring the end, and this had to do with the Spear Squad. They were in a position far beyond them, and it was DX's match, not theirs. We wouldn't be saying that if Edge and Randy Orton were in this position, but DX were back. And McMahon was planning something for Raw. Alright, that's Vengeance 2006. This was a very strong representation of what Raw in the summer 2006 was all about. I'd say it was a fun show. Should the main event been a bit better? I don't know, because I feel like they reached its full potential by having the Spear Squad and DX face off. That was as good as it was going to get if you had these two in a pay-per-view main event. Edge and RVD was pretty fun. The Triple Threat Intercontinental Championship match was very entertaining. I liked it. Mick Foley and Ric Flair, I just didn't like it that much. Opener, nice. And of course, John Cena Sabu's Extreme Lumberjack match was pretty damn good. So it's a nice show. If you have 3 hours to watch it, I don't think you'll be disappointed by it. I thought it was a decent show. It was satisfying. It wasn't great. There was better Vengeance pay-per-views in the past, but this one ranks high. Alright, what do you guys think of Vengeance 2006? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the 5-star frog splash on the like button, and perhaps the sweet chin music and the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.